Okay, so what we're going to be talking about now is something called constraints. Constraints are a very useful way for having one object be driven by the actions of another object. In this particular case, what we have is we have a tiny little mouse who needs to get to his home, and we have this cat who is going to watch him all the way in. And the idea here is that we simplify the animation process by using constraints, basically taking this mouse and having him follow a path, and having the cat's eyes automatically follow the mouse itself. The main thing here is that we could always go through and keyframe the mouse and the eyes individually like we've been doing so far. However, using constraints greatly simplifies this entire process. Okay, so let's get started. So let's jump back into all of our views so we can clearly see what is going on. We already have a path defined for us. Now this path is just very simply a line. Now we're going to select the mouse, and we want to make sure that we select the mouse body, okay? We don't want to select any other parts because the eyes, the ears, and so forth are all linked to the body. And just as a side note, this character was all created using primitives, actually this entire scene. The only exception is the hole right there. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to bind or constrain this body to this path. And so we do that by, again, making sure that our body is selected, going to the top of the screen to the animation menu. From the constraints section, we want to apply a path constraint. Once we select path constraint, we get this little rubber band option. And as we drag our cursor over the path, you can see that it changes. However, if we drag it over the object, nothing happens. So it knows that it can only select lines or splines for paths. So we left click, and you'll notice that the mouse shifted just a little bit. So now in our perspective view, we're going to just jump into there real quick. As I scrub through the interface or scrub through the timeline here, notice what happens particularly at this turn. The mouse goes into sidestepping. I mean, if we wanted the mouse to taunt the cat, you could do a little dance all the way into the mouse hole. However, in this particular case, we just want him to scurry around and follow the actual path. Now, whenever you apply a constraint, it's going to drop you into the motion panel, okay? So if you ever find yourself in another tab and you want to get back to the constraints parameters, just jump over to the motion panel, which looks like the little wheel there. Now within here, the path constraint has its own set of options. The one that we want to assign first is to check on follow. So what's going to happen is now the mouse will follow the curve. If we do not have that activated, you can see what happens. So without, with. Now in addition to just following the path, what we also want to do is we want to kind of have them lean into the turn a little bit. We can do that with bank. Banking allows us to adjust how much this character kind of just leans into the turns. And so now, when he goes on any turn, he's going to lean into it a little bit. So it's just a nice little subtle thing for this particular animation. So we hit play, and there he goes, all the way home. Now, if your mouse or your particular object isn't lined up properly, you can always change which axis is used for alignment here. So you can do Z, Y, X, you can flip, and so forth. You can also specify basically where along the path it is at any particular time. If you'll notice right above our follow and bank options, we have the percent along the path. This is basically where it is on the path at any given time. When you assign a path constraint, it automatically creates two keyframes for you using your active time segment. So you can see here we have one key at the beginning where the percent will be 0, and then we have one key at the end where the percent is going to be 100. Now if you want to change the speed at any time, you can go in here, turn on auto key, and then tell the system where you want it to be at that point in time. So for example, we want him to rush up to that and then slow down for the rest. So here we have him rush right up, and then he slows down a little bit for the rest. Going slow, and then speeds up. So I encourage you to go through and just kind of play with the settings, play with different methods of controlling this mouse using what you see here. Now we're going to take a look at another constraint. In this case, it's called the look at constraint. And it's very appropriate for these eyes since, eyes look at things. So what we want to do is we want to select one of the eyes. In this case, the cat left eye. I'm going to go up to Animation, Constraints. Click on Look at Constraint. And click on the mouse's body. Now notice what happened. His eye got completely screwed up. It's now pointing towards the ceiling. That tells us that the axes are all wrong for this particular situation. Now that's fine, because what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through how to fix this problem, because chances are you're going to encounter this as opposed to encountering everything working just perfectly the first time you try it. So with the eye pointing towards the ceiling, what we want to do is within the look at constraints settings, we want to check to see exactly what axes are being used and what axes for our object exist, or which way they're pointing. So we want to switch over to local so we get a better idea of what the object's local coordinate system is. So in this particular case, what we want to do is we want to select the look at axis to be Z. And the reason for that is because Z is pointing out the front of the eye. X is pointing to the side, and Y is pointing up. We also want to specify what the other axes are. We can choose a source axis to match to it. We can choose an align up node axis. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to set it to Y for the up node, and we're going to set the source axis to X. So there we go. Not bad. But actually, I think it might be reversed because we didn't have our entire eyelid down there at the bottom. So we're just going to flip it really quick to get our Y actually pointing up instead of pointing down. So now when we follow, there we go. So unless this cat has a glass eye, we need to do the same for the other side. So we're going to select the right eye, go up to Animation, Constraints, Look at Constraint, and click on the mouse's body. Now, whenever you're in a selection mode, you can always hit H on the keyboard to bring up the Select by Name. You can choose the object that you want and click on Pick. Now, in this case, notice what happened. He's actually looking completely in the wrong direction. So we're going to do Z again. Going to set it to X. And we're going to play with our settings to try to find which one works the best. And actually, in this particular case, I had it look at its own body. So at the top of the Look at Constraints properties, you can see that we have a list of targets here that are assigned to this particular constraint. So in this case, we have the cat body, which obviously is incorrect. So instead, what we want to do is we want to select it and click Delete Look at Target. We now want to bring our mouse further into view. We're going to click on Add Look at Target, and then click on the mouse body. And so this will help us add multiple targets if we wanted to. Say we wanted to have the cat look at two objects and kind of blend between them. That's a bit more of an advanced technique, but just know that those sort of things are possible. And so now we're going to go down and adjust our setting. So we want to flip the eye. Okay, and now when we play it back, there we go. We have the cat following the mouse all the way home. Now there are many constraints that you can use here, and we're just going to create a very simple box here and another one right next to it just to demonstrate a small concept. As you saw, constraints allow you to bind one object to another, or basically have it constrained to one object to another. So if we select one of these objects, go to Animation, Constraints, Orientation Constraint. Now, when we select the other box as the option, if I rotate the purple box, notice that the blue box rotates in the exact same way. But notice where it's rotating around. It's rotating around its own pivot point. Because you may be asking yourself, why don't I just link the two if I want to rotate one and have the other one rotate as well? And this is a key distinction here. So here, if I remove that particular orientation constraint by going into its properties in the motion panel, and underneath rotation list, click on orientation constraint, click on delete. But now go over to the link tool, click and drag from our blue box to our purple box, and we now rotate our purple box. Notice the difference, okay? Now, of course, we can go into local, but that's still going to keep the same effect. So if you want an object to have the same orientation as another object, but you want it to keep its current position, orientation constraint is the way to go. And there are some other constraints here definitely worth playing with. You have such things as a surface constraint, which allows you to bind one object to the surface of another one. You have a link constraint, which allows you to kind of like animate the linking capability. So for example, if a character is picking up a box, before the box is in the character's hand, you do not want a link constraint there, or you do not want any sort of linking parent-child relationship. But once he picks up the box, you want that box to follow the hands. And that's where this can be useful. You don't have to then animate the box identical to the hand. It just automatically follows it. So there are some very nice options here to play with, and I encourage you to do so.